Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today is going to be a review of the first day of map 8. There's been a lot of other videos like this on YouTube, and I just have all of the fights playing in the background. I'm going to narrate the fights a little bit, tell you about my pathing and about the champions that I brought in, and also tell you a little bit about the planning process and sort of some initial thoughts of what I thought of this map and how it went for SSX1 on day 1. We're starting off here with one of the common fights. This is a Human Torch, and I have Moleman on my team mostly for the section 3 paths that I'm going to be using him on, and he's a pretty good counter here. We have to worry about the unblockable special ones, and I basically just got into Frenzy as fast as I could, and then I kind of just turtle up and use my Unstoppable to get him down. I do think that fight is going to take a little longer on day 5, and I'm going to have to bait some specials, but on day 1 it really went down quite quickly. And then the second fight, we also had a war plan to deal with, and some people have been joking about this, but if you were an officer on this Saturday, it was just a nightmare because we had a war. It's always hard on weekends to find time to do war plans, and then also there was like a million questions about map 8. We had to make sure everybody was secure on this, and they couldn't even join until we had come out with the war plan, just in case there were some doubled up attackers. So you know, it was a lot. It was a lot to deal with, and we just sort of did the best we could. So this is the same node. This is one of these shared fights. It's unblockable special 1. I also have a power lock on 1, but of course they made it a passive power lock, so you can't even really heal from it. That's sort of a theme with map 8, is they change a lot of nodes that you're used to being passive nodes. So there's no debuffs or buffs that you can take advantage of either on attack or for healing and with willpower. But for these fights, I'm mostly just leaning into the block proficiency that CGR has and taking lots of blocked hits, and he didn't even throw a single special the whole time, so I didn't have to worry about evading it. But like I said, with larger health pools, I'm sure I'm going to have to either block or evade some of those specials in the next week as it comes down. So now we're getting onto my actual path. It has turtling, which is basically like when you don't hit them, they get armor, and then it also has armored assaults. And then there's mystic conditioning, which means nullify mechanics have a chance to fail, or they're not going to work. So, you know, the way this works is they get an armor, they go unblockable. Of course, Dr. Octopus has an armor native to his kit, so we need to watch out for not only the armored assault timer, but as you can see there, when he gets hit enough, he does get just his straight up armor. So I'm not trying to do a ton of damage here. I'm just trying to like cycle through my judgments. It seems like the Fate Seal and the armor breaks and everything are going to be my way of removing his armors. But in general, that's the way I'm playing this node. There is a way, if I wanted to dash back and hold block, I have a crossfight that will help me deal with the unblockable. And maybe I should have leveraged that a little bit more. But you know, so I have it right here. So technically, if he ran into me, he would actually miss because I dashed back. You saw those little like what are they called? Goggles. When those are on you, it means you're going to miss unblockable attacks, which is pretty cool. I just didn't end up leveraging that. So moving on to to the second fight on the path, we're going to be using CGR again. As I talked about in my spreadsheet video, they're really kind of encouraging you to pick one champ to counter the entire lane and then use these cross fights that get put on them so that you are benefited throughout the entire path. And I mean, that's an okay design in terms of like RPG countering and knowing like a meta counter, but it doesn't really come into play on this path, but it does come into play on some other paths where it would be really nice if you could use 2 champions on the path and still get the benefit of the crossfight, but it ends up being a situation where that's not going to happen. And like the one example I could think of is right next to me on path 7, there's a diss track path, and they reward you for using prowess champions. So like obviously someone like Apocalypse has 4 prowess if he's ramped up, and very easy to activate diss track, but the lane ends with a Mysterio, and there's also a Hulkbuster who, you know, he can change your offensive ability accuracy around, and he also has the shocks and stuff which Apocalypse can't deal with. Or certainly, you know, you would think, oh, you know, it's diss track, so Sunspot would work. But because of that Hulkbuster, the shocks are really going to mess around with him. As we see in this fight, the turtling got me a little bit because he was being passive. So I do need to deal with this unblockable for a while. I have the eye goggles things, which will let me miss if I do make a mistake, but I'm mostly just playing the node kind of unblockable. So anyway, kind of what I was getting at though is like when you have to use one champ for an entire lane, they may not be the best champ for the entire lane, and then you really have to get a little bit more creative with your team planning. So that goes back to my original point from the spreadsheet video, which was that I really wish that they just made it so that the node had a native enhancement for champions instead of having to pick one of them to do the crossfight with. So anyway, we're moving on to the end of this path. This has a Killmonger here, which this is the main reason that I decided CGR would be the best choice here, because his permanent armor break against Killmonger is going to really come in handy. It's just one less thing that I have to worry about in this fight is Killmonger's abilities, so he won't be power gaining, he won't be doing any reverb damage, and we can just kind of go through our normal cycles. Because these are relatively short fights, I'm kind of doing the Munash rotation here, which is like we do a heavy attack, and then we do a light ending power gain attack, and then we do the vigilance medium ending attack, and then we get to a special 2. It's pretty safe, it stacks the armor breaks, it gives you the precision, and for the most part you can get them down before they even throw any specials in a case like that. So yeah, again, day 1 looking pretty easy so far. I'm sure by day 5 it's going to be a little bit more tricky. It does seem like the PI is going to be scaling pretty severely here. So anyway, CGR, at least for that path, that seemed easier than most map 7 paths that I would take in general. So at least my experience was it was pretty straightforward. This Sentinel is one of these common fights again, and this is the one that has like the unblockable special 1 and the power lock 1 and stuff. So we're just using CGR to nuke him down. I figured I had a pretty easy path, and CGR is pretty awesome. Nice little chaining of a heavy into an unblockable special 1 there. A little pro tip, one of the ways you can use CGR. And for me, I don't get to use this guy too much, so I was kind of excited that he basically took like 6 fights in section 1 and ended up doing a pretty good job. So this Sentinel's melting away. I'm gonna have to deal with an unblockable special 1 while he's ticking away. We throw another heavy attack to get our judgment cycle going. Just waiting to bait this thing out. Don't really have to worry about analysis because he's almost dead. Hoping he doesn't throw it and that I can just kind of get one more combo, and then he goes down. Now, one thing that I have noticed, and I think you'll see this a little bit in the next fight, is that the AI seems awfully passive for a high level Alliance Quest map. This is something that other people have been complaining about, and it's just bizarre to me that it's not like map 5 where they just like walk up to you and light intercept you, but there was, it almost felt like the oscillate timer was on armor for part of it, and I'm not really sure why that is. And that's a little bit of a problem on this next fight, which has this is the most annoying combination of nodes for any of the shared fights by far for me. It's pull, so you need projectiles to do damage, so CGR has that covered on his specials, but because of Flux Dispersal and right back at it, you need to land a heavy attack, which makes them debuff immune before you can do your damage because of that Flux Dispersal. So I want to kind of like get to my big specials, and then I'll just have to throw a heavy and figure out one way or another to connect it, I guess, and just bait a lot of his special ones. So this ends up being a pretty long fight. So far we did get our decks on us, so we've pretty much used all of our judgments. When we throw a special, it's going to give us a cruelty, and then we're just going to kind of keep going from there. He's completely unblockable on the special 1s, he evades us there, so really one special 2 was able to like take off half his health, which isn't that bad. It's just kind of an annoying combo for nodes that Kabam said like, oh, these common fights you can just kind of brute force through with anybody, but like pull is a very restricting node, you know, and even CGR, like none of his basic hits are considered projectiles, I don't think. So it's really just down to these big specials. I had to dex there, so I lose my dex. You know, just I kind of did that little step back, and because I didn't get any crits on that, it really didn't do that much damage. And because of Flux Dispersal, that was also kind of getting in the way of my damage. So yeah, this, like, you know, a CGR fight is at risk of timing out on map 8 on day 1. That is not a really good look. Especially for one of these like easier common fights that they're like, oh yeah, anybody can do these fights. There was actually a MODOK like right before this guy too, which looks pretty annoying. But it's like you have to knock him down. He's debuff immune. You have to worry about his monkey schemes, and then you need to like land a projectile hit during that short window. It just kind of seems like a lot of parameters to meet. And then on top of it, like I said, the AI is a little bit passive and all that. So as this one is finishing out, I do think that the spreadsheet that I made, which has kind of been like shared around, and I'm perfectly happy with that. I'm glad that a lot of alliances were able to benefit from that. I do think that the spreadsheet was pretty much right on. One of the most difficult paths that we found was the path right up the middle where basically they go unblockable, passive unblockable after throwing a special attack, and you need shock to cancel this. This is like the tech CAV-EQ node, and it's a little annoying. So that was the one path where I wish there was some kind of better enhancement to deal with the unblockable, because in my path, even though there was unblockable, it really wasn't too difficult. Okay, so moving on to section 2, 3 really annoying nodes that end up being no problem because of the crossfight and the fact that I have a robot. So we have delirium, which is like reverse controls unless if you are a robot, so Ultron check. Then it also has mighty charge, which means you lose the debuffs, but they also go unstoppable. But because of the crossfight, there is this whole thing called interception, which basically, I think you'll see it eventually. Yeah, intercept will just cancel out an unstoppable, and it will also give you a fury. It doesn't seem to be as big of a fury as like the foresight node, but it's the same idea. They're rewarding you for intercepting, and also it's always making it safe with the mighty charge. So as somebody who used to take the mighty charge lane in the old AQ, which had like Rhino and Juggernaut and Vision on it and stuff, like this actually was pretty easy, like all things considered. You know, I had class advantage. There was nothing that he could do, and I could freely intercept. I mean, this is a little bit of a joke of a lane. On paper, it was like, oh no, delirium and mighty charge, but you know, all you got to do is bring a robot and utilize the crossfights, and you should be good. One of the interesting things that we found out is that if you die, that actually counts as one of the fights for the crossfight. So this crossfight is only going to last for the duration of the path pretty much. But if I ended up dying in one of these fights, then it would actually lose the crossfight a fight early. Now, the other weird thing though is that I believe it lasts for 4 total fights, and there's only 3 fights on the lane. So I guess I would technically have an extra one here, but on some of the other ones in section 1 and in section 3, it is completely possible for you to lose your crossfight. So I do have an armor up, so I'm pretty much good. Missed the dex, so I think that was like the first time I actually got hit in all of map 8. So that says something there. Like it really has been scaled pretty well for me so far that I haven't really had any trouble. And Ultron's a bit of a tank, and he can regen the energy damage, so that one didn't really hurt that much at all. Part of the reason I took this path is because, you know, obviously like Warlock or Guillotine 2099 or, you know, Nebula or something, like another robot could take these paths. But we've basically never assigned Ultron to Alliance War, and I think I'm the only one in the battle group with a rank 3 Ultron. So we figured if Ultron went here, it would be so easy for the lane. Ooh, lots of lag there, by the way. I don't know if you saw that. But we figured that Ultron would be pretty much perfect for the lane, and that he would never really interfere with planning with Alliance War, and if for some reason we needed him, I could always just use my Warlock instead. So that was kind of why I got this path, and I guess I wasn't expecting it to be so much of a nothing path. Like there's literally nothing going on here. You're just fighting the defenders, and the crossfight is going to take care of the unstoppable, which is the sort of only annoying thing about it. And yeah, Night Thrasher's a little annoying just because I don't have class advantage here. And my evade, interestingly, my evade failed, which I wasn't sure. Well, I guess that would make sense that the evade would fail because it kind of works more like a true strike than an ability accuracy thing. So yeah, carry on. Carry on. I was wrong there. But yeah, so Ultron just completely owns his path. There's really nothing to it. It like I said, like so far my first two paths were actually pretty easy. Like I felt like because there's no modifiers, like there's no parry curse or anything like that, that there really isn't much to talk about here. Ultron pretty much just goes in there and takes care of business. I do know that DLL, who was right next to me, mentioned that on the buffed up path, the Super Scroll was a little bit of a BS fight because you need to have him with 3 buffs on him. It's like a mirror style version of buffed up where you both need 3 buffs. And, you know, when he has 3 buffs, he's going to eventually have 5 buffs, which means that he's going to eventually get a power gain. And when he gets a power gain, it can be pretty annoying if he turtles up and throws a special 2 into your block. So I don't like that design of that fight. Like I said, I don't really like the design of that shock unblockable path, and that one is repeated twice, so people have to deal with that with like one champion for their shock type inflicting champ. Pretty annoying. Here, I guess this guy just has aspect of evolution, and it didn't matter because he died so fast. So yeah, CGR takes another fight, and that's pretty much the end of section 2. Slayman ended up taking the Hercules, or excuse me, he took Nimrod with Hercules. I think it was even noted. So definitely check out his video. I'm gonna link his video and DLL's video because I think they are both doing the same type of map 8 review. But I ended up not getting any action on the minis. I mean, I guess CGR could do a little bit, but against Nimrod, his armor breaks don't work, so it's kind of like probably not going to do that much damage. So yeah, I ended up not taking any bosses. I could potentially help with Penny Parker at the end if needed, if we get down to like a beatdown strategy, but I didn't even see her today. I was basically done with my path, and then AQ was 100% the next time I checked. So here we go. This is another common fight. And again, most of these common fights, like you don't even really need to read the nodes. You just kind of like go into them and you're going to be fine. And like the fact that I had class advantage on both of these ones coming up, I was kind of like, yeah, it'll be fine. And you know, CGR gets that really cool power lock, which we love. So against the synthesis of vision is really no big deal at all. You know, this is another reason I love CGR, is because like I'm not really focused on any one specific rotation. I'm just kind of using him and keeping track of his judgments, and I just really enjoy playing him. So it's kind of cool that he was able to make the team. Now, in terms of the energy usage, I do want to kind of talk about that a little bit. Because we did get a little behind at the beginning. Like I said, it was such a grind to get this war plan together and then, you know, enter AQ like a couple hours after war started. Like we were already running late. It was a Saturday. Some people had some family commitments. So I was actually legit nervous at the beginning of it because it seemed like we may run out of time or like be rushing at the end. But somehow in section 2, we really made up for lost time. So it's interesting to me that there's only 7 paths in section 1. That's good and bad. It's good because like if you have someone with a weird time zone or somebody with a really crazy work schedule, you can put them on backup. But the bad part of that is that it also means, you know, if they join really late, they haven't contributed any energy yet, and then, you know, you're going to be in a little bit of trouble if all of a sudden like other people are completely out of energy and you're entering section 2 and they can't finish it before bed and all that. So to me, that's a little annoying. I think what it might mean for us is that we need to coordinate a little bit better about who is taking what fights, particularly those common fights. Like in section 1, those Flux, Dispersal, and Pull fights, like really, I think those need to be taken by the backups. I don't really see people iteming out on this thing currently. Like our team really did fine. Like I really think they did quite well on the first day. Like yes, there was some item usage, and for some people it was a little heavier than others, but I did try my best to try to not completely screw over anybody. Like I said, that shock path is a little annoying, and I think I gave the vital strikes path to somebody with a Corvus and a Quake. So he was our backup in section 3 just because like he had the 2 BS counters with the Corvus and the Quake and all that. So I was like, hey man, if you can just be backup, you know, and take this annoying path for us in section 1, that would be really helpful. And that ended up working out. So yeah, I'm actually like healing right now off of this shock and this armor break, which is pretty insane. Like CGR is still basically like full yellow barring it like all the way into section 3, which was pretty wild to me. I think like super underrated is CGR's block proficiency. It is such a great piece of utility, and especially in these fights that are sort of like medium length and without a huge amount of attack, it's really saving me a lot of damage. And I was even able to regen a little bit with my willpower 3 out of 3 there. So that was all I was able to do on day 1. Now this is the next morning when I had enough energy to take this whole path. And this is another type of path that on paper looks terrible, right? It's like you have to use your special right away. If you get clipped by a special or after a special, you just instantly die. And it also has footloose, and all the champs also have some kind of auto block, right? So, you know, after he throws a special, the Overseer, he's stun immune and there's some form of auto block, but the crossfight gives us a way to combat the unstoppable. And plus Moleman is just like a tank, and he's also super high damage. So this is gonna go pretty well. This and the spam at the end of it is probably the hardest fight. I will say, like, I don't know if there's a better counter than Moleman, because he has the true accuracy pretty much all fight. And then if you watch this, if I well-time block, the unstoppable goes away, and that's it. And I get a fury from it. So he already has the auto block and the evade taken care of. And then the crossfight gives him an additional ability to get rid of the unstoppable. It's like there's no node. So this comes back again, like there was a footloose path or 2 in map 7, and there were some annoying defenders on it, and like a lot of people just use Corvus to get through it. But here they're like, well, hey, we've got auto block and evade, and we'll give you this unstoppable counter. So if you can bring someone who can handle that, then you're taken care of. So like, I guess that's a good design. I mean, it's almost like borderline too easy if you get what they're trying to do. Like if you do what they tell you to do here, which is, you know, basically bring in like a Moleman or a true strike type champion, it's going to be a pretty easy time. If I went into this with like any old champion, it would be a little trickier. And like, even if you used a mystic to get rid of the footloose, then you'd still have to deal with all these auto blocks and everything. And, you know, against Black Widow, you'd also have to deal with like the evasion and things like that. But yeah, these bleeds are just going for it here, trying to definitely get out of the way there, because she has clipped me in the past, especially with a clunky champ like Moleman. So let's see, I lose the frenzy. I still have the fury from the unstoppable canceling. I'm going to start building up monster mass again. This fight definitely taking a little bit longer than that Overseer fight, but still completely in control. I think I try to get my frenzy back, but she does throw another special. So again, just trying to be careful to avoid all of that. And there, once again, we cancel the unstoppable. I guess I could have just started hitting into her, but I wanted to activate frenzy one more time, and that's about it. So yeah, a little bit longer than the first fight, but overall not too bad. And he is 100% shock immune, which would mean if I did get clipped, it wouldn't really do anything. And once again here, we see another reason why I chose Moleman, another auto block champion. It's like, wow, we see the theme, Kabam. We see what you're doing here. So just like the other fights, I'm starting this thing by doing 2 heavies and then activating Frenzy, because in his current form, Moleman is able to maintain Frenzy and the true accuracy. So who knows if that's always going to stay, but at least for now, it's pretty darn nice. She hasn't even thrown a special yet, and she's already about half down. Again, I could see this taking a while on the day 5, but you know, because he completely counters the node, it's really no danger at all. There's just absolutely nothing happening on this node as long as you cancel out those unstoppables. There's the auto block, doesn't even proc. There she goes again. Let's just, you know, I just keep dashing back to avoid that aspect of death. Like, I just don't want to accidentally get clipped, because then it's game over. I was trying to think, like, would there be, nodes from the epic modifiers that would make this super annoying. And I mean, parry curse maybe a little bit. Turn the tide doesn't really matter for this path. It might matter for using CGR though. Power to cower, like I'm not really having issues with power, but there are other nodes on the field that do. So, you know, I guess like I may have gotten some of the easier lanes overall, or maybe I just happen to have the perfect counters. But like I'm not too scared of this map is sort of what I'm saying. It's like there's really not too much that they can throw at me on these paths that are going to really scare me. But I do know that some other people, you know, did have a couple pain points on their lanes. So this is the most annoying fight just because his special 2 is like one of the most annoying things ever, and he also has a super annoying heavy attack. So trying to bait a special 1, it's looking like it's not going to happen. There we have my favorite part about Moleman, which is his dash back. The only thing I hate more than his dash back is his heavy attack. It's just so short range, as is the dash back. So I really don't love playing Moleman, but like there's no arguing that he is the absolute best counter for this lane. You know, the native evade that this Spider-Ham could be throwing at us is not an issue at all. We're trying to get back into frenzy, but I do take another hit there. But he's so tanky that it's not too big of a deal, and that's about it. He's gonna go down with this special, and our health is low, but hey, the big man survived. The Giganto made it to the very end, and we're good. So that is the end of our lane. There's just this one more vulture on the way to the Penny Parker. This has the same node as before, which I didn't explain, but it's basically tenacity and stun vulnerability. So it's like, yay, if you can actually land a stun, it's going to do damage. So again, it's kind of a nothing node. You just have to watch out when you parry to see if that you're going to lose the debuffs or not. And obviously our armor breaks can go away, so it'll just take, you know, a little bit longer than a normal CGR fight. He's also incinerate immune, so that's kind of all we have to think about. But yeah, this is pretty much the end of my run. I enjoyed it because it was new, but like I said at the beginning of the video and also repeated in the middle, like yesterday was just a bad day for MCOC if you were an officer. I was so stressed out trying to get a war plan together. Mostly, you know, we were all so busy, so like we all took turns kind of contributing to the war plan. And then also, you know, I was pretty familiar in my head with this entire map because I had made the spreadsheet, but like everyone else, it was their first time seeing it, so there was like a lot of questions, and like rightfully so. Like they needed answers to some of these questions, and I had the answers. So it was just a really long day, like looking online and looking in the game and everything, and was a little bit annoying. But hey, hopefully we're off to a good start with this map. I did kind of enjoy my lanes, but I can understand that there are some other perspectives out there of some other lanes that aren't as like cookie cutter in terms of the counters. Like for me, I pretty much had the best counter for every lane, like hands down, and that's super helpful to have those at rank 3. That's not as easy to do with some of the other lanes, would be my opinion on that. We did get the bosses down pretty easily. It does seem like Hercules is going to be a little bit of a stud here. I think we used mostly Nick Fury on the other side for the Spider-Man 2099, but you know, he's a little annoying with Mercy, but it does seem like because there's no regen or anything that anybody can beat it down, and it'll be okay. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this video, guys. Thanks for checking this out, and that's, yeah, I might do a little bit more map 8 content, but so far so good. It does seem like it's not gonna be like a total like stopper for us. Like we are able to get through it. The planning went pretty well, and I am very much looking forward to the end of day 1 of map 8, because like I said, it was just such a nightmare with the war and everything, and hopefully things just kind of coast from here on in and we don't run into any problems. So that's going to do it for today, guys. I appreciate your time, and thanks for checking out this video. I'll talk to you soon.